Hello and welcome back. I'm glad you're here. Today we're going to make this $1 knife look not so $1. You're going to put a walnut handle on it. It's going to make it look a lot better, give it a lot more kind of class or something, you know, just not so cheapy looking like it is right now. So let's get started. Take this off, make some scales to put on it, and take a look at it and see what it looks like. So to get started, we're going to remove these plastic handles. Just have a little aluminum pins in them. We're going to remove all this. There's a variety of ways you can do this. You can grind these off if you want, or you could take a screwdriver or a chisel or something and just get in behind it and pop it off. These things pop off fairly easily. But before we do anything, this knife isn't extremely sharp, but I'm still going to go on and put tape over everything, the whole blade, just to keep anything from happening or getting cut or anything, even though this thing is not really sharp at all. But it's just a good practice to keep. It's a good safety measure. Make sure you don't get cut or anything while you're messing with everything else. Okay, so this first piece was put on just above the writing here. It says stainless steel made in China. I mean, it's from the dollar store, so you know it's obviously probably going to be made in China. But the tape was put up here just above the writing, and the handle or the scales that I'm going to put on it are going to go up above this just to cover everything, give it a cleaner look and everything like that. So I just made it just kind of a straight line across here. It gives me something to go by whenever I'm putting the handles on it. I'm going to finish taping this off and then go from there.
Like a bird on a tree, I'm just sitting here. I got time, it's clear to see from up here.
Alright, so now that we've got that taped off, it's going to be a lot safer to work with. There won't be any problems of getting anything on the blade itself or any chance of getting cut by anything. So we're going to take these handles off. Just slide down in behind it. Just give it a little bit of a twist. Sometimes with these they break off like that. You can sand that off if you want, or grind it or anything like that. You can probably just take a pair of pliers, grab a hold of this, and just pull it out. Now the tang is now exposed. This is what we're going to go over with our wood on. We're going to epoxy it and we're going to put some pins back in it to make it look good. So I'm going to cut this piece of walnut. I'm going to make 2 strips, probably about a 1/4 inch thick. I want it to have a good feel. I don't want it real skinny. I don't want it, you know, I don't really want it really big either, but I want it to have a good feel to it. Alright, so now the next thing I'm going to do is I'm going to put this on the table. I'm going to line that up. Line my tape line up with my wood. Flip it over. Hold it down. I'm going to go on and mark all the way around this. What it's going to do is give me a guideline where to go by, so I can cut this out to get it fit on there. From here, do the same thing to the other side. It's not super critical that your lines are dead on, because after this is attached, it can be sanded down up to the metal and clean everything up. It's actually better to give yourself room here to sand down to the piece instead of trying to cut it exactly the right size, and then if it ends up being too small, then you have to start over.
The world seems small. We can sit together. It's so beautiful, you and me. We're meant to be in the great outdoors, forever free.
There you go. Not super pretty, but like I said, it doesn't have to be. After looking at this, I think what I'm going to do is I'm just going to go on and cut this off here. Same with this one, just go on and cut it off and just make it come straight up to here, and then work it in from there. I'm going to use a 2-ton epoxy resin to hold this on here. It's going to be more than enough to keep it on there. It's also going to have pins in here to help secure it as well. So what I'm going to do is, before I glue it on there, is I'm going to take the opposite piece here, put it on the back side, get it lined up pretty good about where it's going to go. And I'm going to make a mark here and here, just as a reference point to where my pins are going to go later. That way when I glue it up, I'm going to be on the outside and I'll still be able to see my marks to where my pins are going to go. This only needs to be done on one side, because after it's glued together, the hole will be drilled all the way through. With this one in particular, it'll miss any of the metal, so there won't be any need for any metal bits or anything to get through the metal. And then the pins will be added and sanded in later, after everything else is sanded down and pretty much finished. So now I'm just going to take a piece of wax paper and a popsicle stick that I've sanded down to put kind of a point on, so I can mix easier, scoop it off and apply it to the knife and everything else. I mixed up some epoxy. This epoxy is 1:1 by volume. It's usually just done by eye. Just put out equal amounts of each one. I always go on the side of a little more than I'm pretty sure I'm going to need, just so I don't have to stop in the middle of the process and come back and mix more. It looks about right. I'm going to mix this up. Something else you can do with a sander or with just sandpaper is you can scuff up this area with sandpaper. It'll help the epoxy bond a little better. So now that we've got the epoxy mixed up, just go on and put it all over. Just going to be liberal with it. Put a good layer on both of your scales or handles, whatever you want to call them. Make sure when you go to do the other one, you do the opposite side of it. Now that the epoxy is on the handles, take your handle, flip it over, and to keep everything consistent, line it up with this tape line up here, and then put it on to where there's wood exposed all the way around all the outside of the tang itself, out on the outside of the metal. That can be sanded back down to it after the epoxy is set. So once you get everything lined up where you want it, you take a clamp, go on and apply some light pressure to it so that you can still make some final adjustments before tightening the clamp down. Once you've got it where you want it, just go on and apply some pressure on the clamps. Doesn't have to be a super amount of pressure, just enough to make sure everything's held flat and in place while the epoxy sets. Once it's clamped in place, something I like to do, take a toothpick and a paper towel, wrap the paper towel over the toothpick a little bit to give it a little more rigidity, and come in and clean up the resin along here and down along here on both sides. These are going to be things you're not really going to be able to sand into after the epoxy set. Or, I mean, you can, but you take the risk of sanding into your blade itself. Not something you're really trying to do. So anything you can clean up right now before you let the epoxy set will help you in the end. This particular epoxy sets in about 30 minutes and cures in anywhere from 8 to 12 hours. I'm probably going to come back maybe in about an hour. It should be enough to be held in place good enough that I can sand on it. If you have any doubts about it, just go on and wait 12 hours or overnight or the next day or something before you start sanding on it. But it should be fine for this. I'm gonna be pretty easy with it. Try not to get a lot of heat while I'm doing it, so shouldn't be a problem. And then we'll get this cleaned up, put the pins in it, and do some final sanding and get everything cleaned up and make it look good. Now that the epoxy's had time to set up, the next step is going to be to sand everything. I'm going to sand it all the way down until it comes up to the metal layer, and then roll these corners, give it a better feel. I'm going to kind of sand this down and give it kind of a taper, maybe here and here, just so it's not so abrupt out here on the end.
Sometimes you need to go and take a step back to see the truth around you from a distance.
Now that you've got it sanded down, rolled over kind of the way you want it, now's the time to put the pins in. And we still have our marks here from earlier. So I'm going to drill 2 holes in here. I'm going to use a dowel rod. This is a lighter color. It's going to contrast real well with the walnut. Walnut's dark. This is going to be light. It's going to contrast real well with it. I'm going to drill 2 holes here, and I'm going to cut these. I'm going to cut them to where they're longer than the actual piece. They'll be easy to sand down. It won't take much to sand these down and get them flat with the surface here. So now, as you can see, there's holes down through there. These will get pushed in and come out the other side here with a little bit of extra to sand down and make it really smooth and flush. I'm just going to use super glue for these. If you want to, you're always welcome to use epoxy as well. I think super glue is going to work just as well for this. These are just pins. They shouldn't come out anyway, so. Now the pins are in it. Quick sanding just to take this back down flat. We'll take care of all this, so to get rid of all the excess glue, the excess wood sticking out. We're going to do that real quick and I'll be right back. And there we go, those are sanded down flat. Next thing, I'm going to take a piece of 80 grit sandpaper and go over everything here. Kind of finish shaping just a little bit, even everything out. And then I'm going to use the 220 and then the 1000 grit to really smooth it out real good. And then I'm going to oil it up and then remove the tape. And now once you get it sanded down and smoothed out to where you want it, now you can put oil on it. Go over, wipe everything off, remove all your tape, and now your $1 knife looks a whole lot better. So that's going to do it for another one. Thank you all for stopping by. If you enjoy the content, don't forget to like, comment, and subscribe. And when you subscribe, don't forget to hit that notification bell to be notified of the upcoming videos. Thank you all. Take care. We'll see you next time.
Distance you can tell.
Once you've got, man, dude.